way. We just can't build it fast enough.
And because that money, that restore money, is so important, but right now in a down economy, I assume it is hard to get other members of Congress to go along with this and spend money here. Maybe they don't realize it's an investment in not just the state's future, but the country's future.
Right, and that's the message we keep. But, you know, they stepped up. I mean, the Congress stepped up. The President has signed the Restore Act. It is law, and we're going to redirect 80% of the penalties from BP to exactly what you're seeing on television, for better flood control protection in the region in all of South Louisiana, from southeast to southwest. And, you know, help us pass the Restore Act. They're very, very aware, and it's a message that's sometimes difficult to get across when people are cutting budgets in Washington. That's why the BP penalty money was so significant, because it's not public money. It was private money paid by a polluter, in this case BP.
And we're being joined now on the telephone by Senator Mary Landrieu. Senator Landrieu?
Hi, Eric. Hi, Angela.
How are you? And what's the federal response been like on this so far?
Well, they're on standby and ready to move at any minute. Craig Fugate I spoke with this morning and have been in touch with him daily. He's in Baton Rouge, embedded with the governor at the Emergency Center, and spoke with Secretary Napolitano. She's at her operations center as well. All eyes are on our region. And they had a conversation with the president this morning, and of course he called the local officials yesterday. But, you know, they can't move out with electricity, a restoration, or FEMA response until this wind dies down. So this is a very nasty, determined storm that just is hovering over our area and causing a lot of damage.
And Senator, the heartbreaking story, the video, the flooding we're seeing in Plaquemines Parish, in Lafourche and Terrebonne, it really does emphasize this need for coastal restoration and how valuable getting this land back in Louisiana is to this state and to this country.
Absolutely, and that is the message that I continue to give in our congressional delegation. It's not just about the 4.5 million people that live in Louisiana or the 3 million that live in coastal Louisiana and the Gulf Coast. It's about the whole nation. And the barrier islands, like Grand Isle, that may not have many people, is the first line of defense. And the Corps of Engineers continues, and the federal government, to underestimate the importance of Grand Isle and Lower Plaquemine. In fact, we had a big fight after Katrina, and they decided not to include Lower Plaquemine in the federal protection system. We argued and argued and argued, and now you can see the results. So it's heartbreaking to watch people have to climb up into their attics and on their roof. Like I said, we're not down here sunbathing. I mean, we're operating the largest river system in North America. It drains 40% of the continent. You know, we refine 40% of the oil in the country. I could go on and on. So it's just a learning process. I guess the good news I can say, Eric and Angela, is the federal levee system, the $14 billion of investments that came on the heels of Katrina. The flood walls seem to be holding for the metropolitan area. But, you know, Houma is still without protection. Morganza to the Gulf has been delayed again, and yes, you're right, we have a lot more work to do.
Senator, back to what you were saying about the fight that you've had since Katrina about trying to get these more protected. Visually, what they're looking at right now, would this help in that fight?
Oh, absolutely. That's what I've called, you know, Janet this morning, Secretary Napolitano, and I'm going to be speaking to General Peabody, the Corps General, and say, please look at these visuals. You know, there might not be many people that live in Grand Isle. There might not be many people that live in South Plaquemine, but it is a barrier. It is a barrier to the metropolitan area, and people deserve protection. And you've just got to adjust your assumptions. In other words, you know, if you're a rural area, you just don't get the credit that you do when you're an urban area like, you know, Houma or Terrebonne, or Houma or Jefferson or Orleans. And then Morganza to the Gulf has been a terrible disappointment. We just got another delay. That project, Eric and Angela, was authorized 20 years ago. That's before I got to the Senate. Yeah. It still has not been implemented because we keep changing the cost estimates. But that is what the restore money is going to go to. That's why we have a master plan. There's hope on the way. We just can't build it fast enough.
And because that money, that restore money, is so important, but right now in a down economy, I assume it is hard to get other members of Congress to go along with this and spend money here. Maybe they don't realize it's an investment in not just the state's future, but the country's future.
Right, and that's the message we keep. But, you know, they stepped up. I mean, the Congress stepped up. The President has signed the Restore Act. It is law, and we're going to redirect 80% of the penalties from BP to exactly what you're seeing on television, for better flood control protection in the region in all of South Louisiana, from southeast to southwest. And, you know, Mississippi and Texas and Alabama can do the same. So it's going to be the largest single investment in coastal restoration in the history of the country. And I'm very pleased to have led that effort. Everyone helped, bipartisan effort. It's just we can't get it fast enough, Eric. I mean, you can see on the screen watching people evacuate. It's heartbreaking for them to lose everything once again.
Yeah.
But there's no thing in the region. It seems like the $14 billion of investments that we made are working, and if the storm would just move out of here, we could get the crews out to put up, you know, to get the electricity back on.
Senator, I know that I believe it's September 12th, an organization, perhaps it's Save Our Wetlands, but a big organization is going to go to the White House and make a report also to Congress. And it's pretty much saying what you are saying, that we need to save this as a barrier to the rest of the country, not just to ourselves, but to all the functions that we have. Are you aware of that and what the content is going to be?
Absolutely. I mean, I helped to create America's Wetlands and have been very involved in all of those efforts, you know, for now over 2 decades. And their message is very potent, and it's wonderful to build support from around the country. And the major environmental organizations stepped up to help us pass the Restore Act. They're very, very aware. And it's a message that's sometimes difficult to get across when people are cutting budgets in Washington. That's why the BP penalty money was so significant, because it's not public money. It was private money paid by a polluter, in this case BP. But getting additional federal money, and I'll just leave you with this statistic, Eric, that's important and very troubling. The Corps of Engineers has in its budget about $2 to $3 billion every year for the entire country. We could spend $2 to $3 billion in the Gulf Coast every year.
And there are levees all over the country that need to be rebuilt.
Exactly. And so the core budget is wholly inadequate, which is why I've been pushing outside of the core budget to get revenue sharing, to get the Restore Act, because we couldn't get the core budget big enough to handle our situation. But that's a problem for the whole nation, but we really suffer when the core budget is underfunded, and that is our great challenge. But again, you know, I can see the glass half full with the storm. At least what we've built seems to be working, and we've got a lot more to build. All
right, Senator Landrieu, thank you so much. We appreciate you taking the time and passing along this vital information.
Thank you. So very much. Very, very important. That's really the story of the year, not just the story of these few days.
Probably the decade.
That's right. We are now joined by